In college about 2.5 years ago, I met this guy. I wanted to make a friend and he seemed harmless, despite my feeling that something was off. At the time, I ignored my gut in favor of gaining a local friend. He seemed to have a crush from the time that he met me, and while I was flattered, I wasn't interested. I told him as much, and he didn't argue at first. The next time I met him, he had some arguments for why we were compatible. I stuck to my guns. He seemed accepting and didn't bring it up again. We talked and walked around the school. In the course of our conversations, he learned a lot about my interests and hobbies and checked them all out, then reported back to me about where he'd visited or when he thought he had an idea to spend time together. I didn't realize it at the moment, but he was really good at talking about nothing at all, and I came away knowing literally nothing about him besides his name. One day, I was about to get kicked out of the building because they were closing, and I didn't have a ride home. You probably guessed what is about to happen. He took me home. I was smart about it, telling my father when we left and who I was with. Things started to get creepy after that. He started showing up where I was by coincidence. He would stand outside my class and stare at me. I tried talking to the prof about it, but all he said was that I was smart in changing my seat in class, and that I should go to campus security if he made me feel threatened. I asked him to give me some space, and he quit obviously showing up everywhere. One day I came home from school to my brother telling me about a trespasser on our property. We live in the middle of nowhere, and around our neighborhood, you'll see a lot of posts or mailboxes painted lavender. It's a code to everyone there that we don't like strangers trespassing on our property. My dad made a big deal about it, and either side of our driveway is graced by a lavender post. The trespasser must have parked in our neighbor's yard, then navigated the forest behind our house, because when my brother confronted him, he ran into the forest. He hadn't parked anywhere nearby. My brother described this man to me, and he fit the description of my school stalker. I guess my brother ran out with our little cricket and waved it around at the air. A cricket may injure a small animal, but at the range bro described, he probably wouldn't even have bruised from it. It's still scary to see someone with a weapon, as my brother was alone at the time. I decided to end my silence toward him. It seemed better to know where he was than for him to show up unexpectedly. I didn't want to ruin his college opportunity because of an overreaction on my part, and I didn't know that security would believe me. Anyway, as I was seen with him a lot before, I ended up dropping a class that semester and failed another. The next semester went better, and I rarely see him now. I've since moved in with my fiancé about half an hour from my old home. I dropped out of college so that I can find out what I want to do with my life before I spend money and time on school again. To one college creep, I'd say let's never meet again, but until I move from the area, I don't think that's feasible. When I started college in 2011, I formed a solid friendship group and threw myself into the social life. One guy in my block, who always showed up to parties and never spoke much to anyone, was a classic neckbeard, overweight anime fan, lacking in social skills combined with awkward attempts to be overconfident. He also never washed, wore stained gray clothes that he never changed, had long, lank, greasy hair, and was surrounded by a cloud of BO. He would enter the room before he did. Sorry if this description sounds unnecessarily mean. I wouldn't normally judge people for these things in themselves, but combined with his behavior since, it is frankly warranted. With regret in hindsight, I made the mistake of chatting with him at one of these parties, with the aim of being friendly and helping him get more integrated into the group. From that moment, a switch flipped in him, and he began obsessively stalking me, which would go on for the rest of my freshman year. He would try to isolate me at social events, talking to me for hours and taking none of my cues that I wanted to bring it to a close. If I tried to lose him, he would find me. If I spent time with my actual friends, he would follow and force his way into the conversation, following me around like a wasp on a mission. If he saw me in public, he would give me this 1,000-yard, unblinking stare, even from a couple 100 meters away, and would come over. It got to the point that I felt I had some kind of tracker on me, because wherever I was, he would appear. Even when leaving the campus library at 3 a.m., more than once at night, I looked through the spy hole in my door to the hallway outside to see him stood there, staring intensely at my door. Obviously, this was seriously creepy behavior. I felt hunted. I was frightened and on alert at all times, and started to avoid going out of my room. I also started going to my folks a lot just so I could get out of my town. My friends were worried about me, and a couple of them confronted him about his behavior and asked him to leave me alone. This didn't go down well. His obsession turned to rage. Thankfully, he kept more of a distance, but he would still hang out in places he knew I would be, staring at me now with intense hatred. He started telling everyone that I was his girlfriend and had dumped him in a horribly cruel way. It made me question myself that a few people actually believed him. This continued into our sophomore year, when he got close to one of my housemates and started turning up unannounced at our place. This friend believed the stories he was telling and thought I was being unfair in asking him not to bring his friend around. He ended up stealing my mail, including a new bank card. I had no evidence that it was him, but I had so much stuff to go missing, and I knew he was doing this. I also found him in my bedroom. That was the last straw, and my roommate finally accepted that this guy had been lying. When I moved away, the in-person stuff stopped, but he started cyber-stalking me, trying daily to hack any of my accounts that he could find. This continued, though to a lesser extent, for a period of 3 years, but since then everything seemed to die down, and I thought it was over. I recently found his blog, where he writes fantasy stories about our relationship, and calls me the love of his life, more than 10 years later. This happened only a couple of months ago, and only my roommate and a couple of my close friends know this story. I live in the dorms at college with my best friend from high school. We are kind of night owls, and we both like scary stories and movies. I'm kind of a paranoid person, so this event still makes me feel a lot of paranoia when I'm walking around the dorms at night. Anyway, my roommate and I were watching TV when we decided to order a pizza. We called the place and waited for about 30 minutes. We live up on the 7th floor, so we decided to take the elevator. We got to the ground level and found the pizza man. We paid him, and my roommate grabbed the pizza. We went into the elevator. We only went up to 4th floor, an all-girls complex we lived in, a co-ed dorm complex. On the 4th floor, the elevator stopped. My roommate and I backed up to let whoever was on the floor into the elevator. The doors opened, and 3 men, early 20s, came in. They were foreign and spoke a different language. They looked at us, and one of them said, "Pizza, huh?" My roommate and I smiled. They then turned to each other and began laughing. They pressed floor 6, which I later remembered was an all-girl floor, and continued to talk to one another in their own language. As I said before, I'm a very paranoid person, and I started getting a bad vibe from these guys. I figured it was because I didn't know what they were talking about. They got off on floor 6, told us to have a good night, and the door shut. The elevator went up a floor, and soon we were out of the elevator. We started talking about pizza delivery women and how they must be harassed pretty frequently, which was kind of random, but I think both of us were thinking about those guys. We both must have got bad vibes from them. We just stepped into the room as we continued this conversation. I had to use the bathroom, so I stayed by the door. Now, I'm a pretty tough talker, and I said something to the effect of, if a guy harassed me at work, I'd kick his ass and hang his balls from the ceiling. I opened the door as I said this, and looked out into the hallway. Before I could even step out of my door, I saw the 3 men in my hallway, no more than 10 feet in front of the door. I then watched them run back to the elevator as soon as they saw me. I was stunned and it scared me. I slammed the doorroom shut and locked it. My roommate asked what had happened, and I sputtered out, "Those guys from the elevator were right next to our door." We freaked out for a bit and soon settled down. Maybe I overreacted, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense. If they knew someone on our floor, why did they run? How did they know which room we were in? We'd only been in the room for less than a minute, and they must have taken the stairs. Now, things would be different if I hadn't remembered something that happened just a couple of weeks before this event occurred. It was another late night, maybe 2 weeks before, when I had to go to the bathroom, and so did my roommate. I opened the door to go out while my roommate grabbed her shoes. When I looked out there was a man crouched behind a pillar next to the door that leads to the elevator. He was talking on his phone in a different language, similar to the one the men in the elevator were speaking. He looked at me when I came out of the room. I kind of backed into my dorm room and told my roommate. We both brushed it off and went to the bathroom. He was still in the hallway, just crouching there. We went to the bathroom, and when we came back out, the guy was gone. We went back into the room and everything seemed fine. After these two things happened, I've begun to wonder if they were connected in any way. I'm probably just being over paranoid, but I still can't shake the feelings I got from the event. I'm not sure if anyone else will find it scary, but I wanted to share. When I was a junior in college, I lived in a university-owned apartment with 5 other girls. I previously roomed with 2 of them, but the rest were new. Sometime during the first couple of weeks of school, I overheard one of the new girls talking on the phone with her mom. Her name was Kate. I didn't catch the whole conversation, but it seemed like she was slightly arguing with her mom and assured her that she was taking her meds. My ears perked up at the sound of that and was curious. As time went on, though, I forgot about it. The 6 of us got along really well. We hung out together, went to bars and clubs together, watched TV together, etc. I was happy because I didn't get along with some of my roommates from last year, and was happy to have a drama-free year. And Kate was really cool. She was a dance major and a free spirit. She acted as our big sister when we went out to bars and clubs, making sure that we stayed together and watched out for aggressive guys. However, around spring things started to change with Kate. Our roommate Nicole revealed to us that Kate had been visiting her at her work frequently. She worked at one of the student stores on campus, to the point that she started to hide when Kate would show up. She wasn't obnoxious, but just very chatty and distracting. As time went on, it seemed that Kate was taking a strong interest in Nicole, not in a romantic or sexual way, but in a single white female sort of way. Kate even seemed to get upset when Nicole would go out with her boyfriend Andy, even though she was the one who played matchmaker in the first place. At first, the rest of us didn't know what to make of Nicole's accusations, until we started seeing Kate do odd things ourselves. Parking was always tight in our neighborhood, and the cops freely wrote tickets. That didn't stop Kate from parking anywhere she wanted. We were shocked to find Kate had racked up hundreds of dollars in tickets. We also found later that she had dropped her classes. If I recall, she even quit her part-time job. Meanwhile, Kate's harassment of Nicole continued and got stranger. One night, Nicole woke up to find Kate in her room, standing over her and staring intently. Kate said, "You look like you've been crying rivers of sorrow." and walked out. Soon after, Nicole started spending more time at Andy's place. Another time, we were all watching TV in the living room. Two of the guys from across the hall were also there. Kate was in one corner and started laughing to herself. We tried to ignore her, but it was impossible. I left the room at that point to get some work done. A few minutes later, Kate came in my room without knocking, sat on the floor, and lit a joint. My other roommate, Helen, and I asked her to leave because we were working. She left, but a half hour later, she returned and did the same thing. Helen and I looked at each other incredulously, then asked her to leave again. Later, the guys from across the hall told us that she was mumbling strange things about blood and doom and sadness, but still laughing to herself. After months of this, my roommates and I had it. The end of the year was only a few weeks away, but we no longer felt safe. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, per my dad's suggestion. We wondered if she had stopped taking her meds, and her actions were a result of that. We wrote a letter to management requesting that she be kicked out, and all 5 of us signed it. Our wish was granted. Kate was furious with us, naturally. She said she felt betrayed, that we didn't talk to her first. She packed her things while we were out of the apartment. During the last week of school, Kate returned. No one wanted to talk to her, mainly because we were afraid. Linda, Kate's immediate roommate, who she shared a room with, volunteered to confront her. Apparently, Kate was doing better and seemed to start taking her meds again, as she spoke with a level head. She never mentioned why she stopped taking them in the first place. She also had planned to re-enroll in the classes she dropped next year. Looking back, I wonder if we could have handled things differently. Perhaps if we had confronted Kate about her sudden change in behavior, she may have realized that downward spiral she was going on. And surely there was a better alternative than to gang up on her and kick her out. But we were just young girls, and although Nicole and I were psych majors, it didn't mean we were experts on mental health. We were just scared young girls and didn't want her near us.